Hello, I'm Just One Life, and today we're going to open 100 packs of the new Innistrad Alchemy set. When I logged into Magic, I was wondering, when is that new Alchemy set going to go live? And it was today. Very surprised. So, when I logged in, I saw this. It was, what is Alchemy? Of course, I know what Alchemy is, but just so you know, it is a format that's just like Standard, or historic, and these sets will have live balanced cards that are changed if they're too powerful or too weak. And it will also include new cards that are unique to just Alchemy. Things that have, or cards that have mechanics that are impossible in non-digital formats. So that's pretty interesting. And here's page one. When I logged in, I got all of these cards as rewards. 4 new versions of Asika's Chariots, 4 new Gold Spans, 4 new Alrins, and the rest. You can read the whole list right here. I also got 3 extra packs of Innistrad, and all of these cards, some of which have really interesting and unique mechanics to them, like the Key to the Archive and Tireless Angler have the spellbook mechanic where there's 15 cards from them, and if you can draft a card from the spellbook, you can pull from one of those 15 cards. Open up some packs. Boom, here we go, 10 packs opening right there. Okay, Sanguine Brushstroke. Gives me a Blood Artist and a Blood Token, and whenever I sacrifice a Blood Token, each opponent loses a life and I gain a life. And with Blood Artist, whenever a creature dies, they lose life and gain a life. So I could make a really good vampires deck with this card in it. Ishkana Broodmother. She has the spellbook, and she can make a lot of different spider cards. Drider, Blood Weaver. I've noticed, because I just skimmed through some of these real quick, I'm barely familiar with the set. I've noticed that most of the spellbook cards aren't extremely powerful. They're mostly commons with a couple of uncommons and maybe one rare. So, I mean, it is like drawing an extra card, though, every time you get to draft a card. So that can be pretty powerful. There's a new Garruk, Wrath of the Wilds, 4 mana, 3 loyalty, +1, choose a creature card in your hand. It perpetually gets +1/+1 and costs 1 less to cast. Ooh, that's cool. So even if you bounce it to your hand, it will keep those things. Perpetually is an interesting thing that also is unique and will stay in just the Alchemy and historic sets. -1 draft a card from Garruk, and he's got 15 cards. Also, the -5 is till end of turn. Creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample. Okay, so this Planeswalker allows you to draft a card. Really interesting. Geist Pack Alpha, 4 mana, 5/4 trample. When it dies, seek a permanent card with mana value equal to the number of lands you control. Ooh, that's really cool. And he's a wolf, so he can actually upgrade you into a more powerful card, and he could be played in a wolf deck. Wolf/werewolves. Sigardian Evangel. I read him and I was confused for a moment, but then I realized, wait, so on the turn you play him, you can just play as many copies as you can afford, and it will tap down that number of permanents you don't control. So it can be like an Alpha Strike effect. You can get all of their creatures tapped and then get in on that last turn, or you can just build a huge boards of 3/1s. Arms Scavenger. This is another one of the spellbook cards. At the beginning of your upkeep, draft a card from all Arms Scavenger's spellbook, then exile it until end of turn. You may play that card. So it just gives you a 1-turn use of each card whenever he drafts it. Okay. Key to the Archive, also 15 more cards. This one is colorless and goes in every deck, and I expect with the power level of these cards that you'll see this in, like, basically almost every single deck. I mean, these are powerful spellbook cards. I don't know what they were thinking with Key to the Archive, and it taps to add 2 mana, so I expect to see some big creature decks. Begin anew. Destroy all creatures. Creature cards in your hand perpetually get +1/+1. So it's only the cards that you have in hand while you cast this. Okay. Let's open 10 more. What do we got? No wild cards. City Stalker Connoisseur. 4 mana. Oh man, I am blocking some of the cards. Let me get out of the way. That should be fine. Yeah, that's fine. City Stalker Connoisseur. Enters the battlefield. Target opponent discards a card with the greatest mana value among cards in their hand. Make a blood token. Okay, so these are things that you couldn't possibly know without them showing you their whole hand, but now you can snipe a card out without actually knowing what the whole hand is. So I expect to see more discard effects targeting specific stuff. This Ominous Traveler also is only 2 mana. It's a human, and the spellbook cards that you get with it are quite powerful. So I expect you will see Ominous Traveler a lot in many decks. Tovolar, Patrician Geist. There are some powerful cards in the spellbook here. A lot of tribal stuff. So zombies, vampires, and humans and werewolves will play Ominous Traveler. So this might be a signal for tribal decks. Ravenous Pursuit. 2 mana sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. Choose a creature card in your hand. It perpetually is +X/+X, where X is the amount of excess damage dealt this way. So you really want to kill a small, powerful creature of an opponent's with a big, dumb creature of your own, like maybe a troll. I'm not sure. Blood Rage Alpha. When it enters the battlefield, choose one. Another target wolf or werewolf you control fights target creature you don't control. When you cast your next wolf or werewolf spell, it gains. When it enters the battlefield, it fights. Okay. Interesting. And it doesn't say this turn. It's just whenever you cast your next one at all. Interesting. Veteran Ghoul Caller. Menace 2/1. Whenever a creature card in your graveyard is put into your hand, conjure a duplicate of that card into your hand. Whenever a card in your graveyard is put into your hand. So you have to have effects that return cards from your graveyard to your hand, and this makes extra copies of those. Huh. I bet that works in a very specific deck, but I don't really know how that will work. They brought back Gitrog, but this isn't the same Gitrog. This is 4 mana 6/6 Menace. At the beginning of each combat, if it's untapped, any opponent may sacrifice a creature. If they do, tap it, then seek a land card and put it on the battlefield tapped. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it perpetually gains pay 2, tap, sacrifices land, draw a card. So either you get to attack with a 4 mana 6/6 Menace, or you get to ramp. That seems cool. However, cards that give your opponent the option typically are bad, and that's why this card is so pushed, because they have to make it so really difficult to deal with that opponent wants to choose the other option. Hinterland Chef. This is another spellbook card. I'm going to quickly go through them. If you want to pause on any of these, you can. And when it enters the battlefield, draft a card from the spellbook. It perpetually becomes a food artifact in addition to its other types, and gains pay 2, tap, sacrifices creature, you gain 3 life. So it looks like they're all creatures, and they are all artifacts also when they're drafted this way. Angel of Eternal Dawn. When it enters the battlefield, it becomes day, and it can't become night. So this is a Werewolf Hoser card. Your opponents can't cast spells with mana value greater than the number of turns they have begun. So it's also a Treasures Hoser card. Rakdos Treasure trying to play a gold span on turn 3 or turn 4, never going to happen anymore with Angel of Eternal Dawn out. Lupine Harbingers, another card from the Wolf deck. 4 mana 4/4, trample haste, enters the battlefield with X, +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of turns you've begun since it was foretold. And it foretell casts for 2 mana more than its initial casting cost. Weird. That's a weirdly designed card, but again, something you can only do in the digital format because counting the number of turns is not so easy in paper Magic. Predatory Sludge. It looks like this one gives you more copies of Predatory Sludge. When it enters the battlefield, choose a permanent you don't control. When chosen permanent is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, conjure a card named Predatory Sludge into your hand. So this card seeks to have called shots. I'm going to kill that one. Now you get a 3/3. Cool. This works maybe really good with sweepers. So you have a creature, they have a creature, and then you sweep the board. You get a creature and they get nothing. 10 more packs. Here we go. Arm Scavenger again. Unexpected Conversion. Draw 2 cards. Then you may exile an instant or sorcery card from your hand. If you do, search your hand and library for any number of cards with the same name. Seek an instant or sorcery card for each card exiled from your hand this way. Huh. This is a really weird card advantage engine. Draw 2 cards. Exile instant or sorcery. If you do, search your hand for any number of cards with the same name. So you can get rid of a really good card and pull back to your hand all of the other copies of it. Then seek an instant or sorcery card for each card exiled from your hand this way, which is only 1. And to seek a card, you put 1 at random from your library into your hand. So draw 2 cards, exile 1 card from your hand. Get up to 3 more and a random card. Unexpected Conversion definitely is going to have some crazy results. Huh. Another Angel of Eternal Dawn, a Clone Crafter. When it enters the battlefield, conjure a duplicate of a random creature from your opponent's library into your hand. So it looks like your opponent doesn't get to know what it is. It perpetually gains. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast the spell. Clone Crafter pulls a random creature from your opponent's library. I mean, this could be super, super good, or it could be super, super weak. It depends on what deck you're playing against. Some decks, like Is It Control, don't even play creatures, except maybe a Kraken. Ooh, if they're playing only Kraken and Leer, you could just pull a Kraken out for 2 mana, but then you actually have to cast it for its casting cost. Begin anew. Destroy all creatures. We saw that one. We saw Predatory Sludge. Discover the formula. 6 mana instant. Seek 3 non-land cards. Then non-land cards in your hand perpetually gain. This spell costs 1 less to cast. And then Seek is a card at random from your library. So you get 3 non-lands at random for 6 mana. That's pretty steep, but it does guarantee they're all non-land. Huh. I wonder if this will be played. Geist Pack Alpha. I believe we read that one. Sinister Reflections. Conjure a duplicate of each of up to 2 target non-token creatures you control into your hand. A duplicate of each of up to 2 target non-token creatures you control. So you pick 2 creatures on the battlefield and get a duplicate of each of them into your hand. Okay? So it doesn't pull actually a card from your library. It makes copies and puts the copies in your hand. For 2 mana. It's like a 2 mana draw 2 of your existing creatures. But it doesn't reduce them from your deck. It sounds a little broken, honestly. Suntail Squadron. 4 mana instant, conjure a card named Suntail Hawk into your hand. If you have fewer than 7 cards in hand, repeat this process. So, 4 mana, fill your hand up to 7 with Suntail Hawks. Okay, neat. If you're down to 0 cards in hand, you top deck this, you get to pull 7 1/1s. Absorb Energy. 3 mana, counter target spell. Cards in your hand that share a card type with that spell perpetually gain. This spell costs 1 less to cast. But it's only the cards in your hand. But look at that art. And it's a 3 mana counter spell, so it's pretty much playable. Frenzied Geist Blaster. 2 mana 2/2 prowess. When Frenzied Geist Blaster enters the battlefield, if there are 20 or more instant and or sorcery cards from among cards in your graveyard, hand, and library, you may discard a card. If you do, seek an instant or sorcery card. So, what this card does is, if you're playing at all in your deck, a total of 20 or more instant or sorcery cards, then you get to discard a card, and seek a random instant or sorcery from your deck. So you could drop a land out of your hand into the graveyard and search for a non-land. Another note on this is if one of your cards gets exiled and you're playing like exactly 20, you no longer have 20 total between your hand, library, and graveyard, because this doesn't list the exile zone. So be careful of playing exactly 20 when you have a card that says stuff like this, because you might just get got by exile effects. And especially with this one, because a lot of instant and sorcery cards have flashback, and then they get exiled. Or maybe Alrund's Epiphany just exiles itself automatically. Obsessive Collector, 4 mana, 4/3, Flying Spirit, Ward 2. Whenever Obsessive Collector deals combat damage to a player, seek a card with mana value equal to the number of cards in your hand. So if you're holding, it's not equal or less, it's exactly that number. So, planning on hitting with this Obsessive Collector, you really have to know what you're going to search for. You got to know your deck really well when you're playing this card. But it's just a card with mana value equal to the numbers, so you don't have to get, like, an instant or sorcery or specifically a creature. It could be anything. Predatory, Sludge, we read that one. Sanguine Brushstroke, we read that. Blood Rage Alpha, we read that. And Angel of Eternal Dawn. Alright, let's get some new cards in here. 10 more packs. Slayer's Bounty. It's a legendary artifact clue. Okay, so it's a clue, not a token. When Slayer's Bounty enters the battlefield, look at the creature cards in your opponent's hand. Whenever you sacrifice Slayer's Bounty or another clue, draft a card from Slayer's Bounty spellbook. Pay 2, sacrifice it, draw a card. So, something about this. This has legendary artifact, and when you play 2 legendary of the same name, you sacrifice one of them. So, even if you just play a second Slayer's Bounty and sacrifice the first one without drawing the extra card, you still get to draft from the Summoner's Spellbook. I haven't tested it to make sure that it works, but as far as I'm aware of the rules, that should be how it works. Pretty interesting. And there seem to be some good cards in here. Shkana, a mythic wild card, nice. Up to 58 mythics. Garruk, Ominous Traveler. Conductive Current. You can't quite read the whole card here, but I'll read it for you. 3 mana sorcery, triple red. Conductive Current deals 3 damage to each creature. Ooh, that's a great board wipe. Then you choose an instant or sorcery card in your hand. It gains perpetually. If the spell would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. Wow, this is a mainstay for burn. And this encourages mono red. Is mono red back in Alchemy? I think it is. I think this card single-handedly pushes that deck from meh to oh. I know those aren't quite quantifiable, but Town Razor Tyrant, a 4 mana 4/4 dragon, flying. When it enters the battlefield, target land you don't control loses all abilities except mana abilities and gains at the beginning of your upkeep. This permanent deals 2 damage to you unless you sacrifice it. So it encourages them to lose a land, and if they don't, they get hurt for it every turn, and it can shut off something like a Faceless Haven, a Hall of the Storm Giants, a Field of Ruin, to protect your own creature lands. Interesting. I think Town Racer Tyrant probably belongs in New Burn, but I'm not sure if it wants to go up to 4 mana anyway. Another Geist Pack Alpha, and a Clone Crafter. Next 10, we're halfway through. Blood Rage Alpha, Veteran Ghoul Caller. We read that one. A rare wild card. Expedition Supplier. This one is whenever it or another human, oh, this cares about humans, enters the battlefield under your control, conjure a card named Utility Knife onto the battlefield. This ability triggers once each turn. Utility Knife is a 1 mana artifact equipment. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control, and the equipped creature gets +1/+1. So whenever a human comes in, it comes in with an extra +1/+1 that goes on any creature you choose, which is really interesting, but it's not the same as a +1/+1 counter, because cards that can sacrifice artifacts are good with it. It has a really high equip cost, so you don't want to re-equip it, so killing the creature might be just good enough to keep that +1/+1 away. There's some interaction options there with that one. Read that one and that one, but Torolf's Disciple, a 3-mana 3/3 with haste, and when it attacks, conjure 4 cards named Lightning Bolt into your library, then shuffle. Oh my, mono red is back! And I got 2 of them right there. I think it might be time to make mono red. And Sigardian Evangel, which we read a little while ago. Alright, 10 more packs. Patient Zero. That sounds spooky as hell. 2-mana 2/2 lifelink. Damage isn't removed from creatures your opponents control during cleanup steps. Oh my. That's terrifying. All the damage remains? Whew. Captain Eberhart. It's a mythic. 2-mana 1/1 double strike. Cast spells from among cards you drew this turn cost... Oh, sorry. Spells cast from among cards you drew this turn cost 1 less to cast. Okay. And since it's a digital format only card, it can keep track of which cards you have drawn this turn. Spells cast from among your cards your opponent drew this turn cost 1 more to cast. So their top decks are more expensive, and your top decks are cheaper. And it's a double striker, so pumping him is great. And he's a human, so he belongs in the humans deck, which puts a bunch of counters on stuff anyway. Interesting. Captain Eberhart, I'm looking at you. Tybalt. Tybalt has a spell book. It's a 5-mana, 3 loyalty planeswalker. +1 is add 2 red, draft a card. Then exile it until end of turn. You may cast the card. Same as the other red card, right? +1, Tybalt deals 3 damage to target creature and or planeswalker until its controller has Tybalt deal 3 damage to them. Unless its controller has Tybalt deal 3 damage to them. If they do, they may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Okay, that's a little bit confusingly worded. It deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Unless its controller. So that could be you or your opponent. Okay, so you can choose your own creature and then instead take the 3 damage and draw a card. So this Tybalt says +1, deal 3 to anything, but your opponents can choose to instead take the 3 damage and discard a card, or you can take the 3 damage from targeting your own creature and draw a card. Huh. There's so many options with Tybalt. I think he's going to be played quite a bit. And there's a lot of really powerful cards in his spellbook too. -X, create X 1/1 red devil creature tokens with when they die, they deal damage to any target. That could be useful in some situations. I mean, burning down the house is 5-mana make 3, and this is also 5-mana make 3. So this is basically one of the 2 modes of burning down the house. It's the worst mode, but it is one of the modes. Frenzied Geist Blaster, 2-mana 2/2 prowess. We read this one, yeah. Discover the formula. Expedition Summoner, Sentinel Squadron. Sap Vitality. Black instant. Sap Vitality deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Choose a creature in your hand. It perpetually gets +3/+0. There are some creatures that you would definitely want to give that to, especially if they have something like First Strike or Menace. Okay. I mean, lifelink would also be a good thing to get 3 more life. Ominous Traveler and a Hinterland Chef. 10 more. We have 30 packs left. Wickering Effigy. 3-mana 1/4 Scarecrow to add to Scarecrow Tribal, which, you know, who knows if that's ever going to be a thing, really. They kind of like tease at it once in a while by making more Scarecrow cards. Defender. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. Cool. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Super cool, but they've printed other effects like this before. There's just a simply better version of that effect with Realm Walker if you're playing Tribal. Whenever you cast a creature spell from your library, it becomes a black bird in addition to its other colors and types, has flying, and a base power toughness 1/1. Oh, weird. So it turns whatever you cast from the top of your library into a 1/1 bird. I mean, it keeps its other abilities, so you could cast like a Hullbreaker Horror from the top of your deck on turn 4 and have that effect on the field. I mean, there's some broken stuff you could do with this Wickering Effigy. This is like the ultimate cheater card. This is going to cheat out some ultra powerful creature effects really early. This is going to be a hell to play against. This might just be like an instant kill on sight, emergency kill card. Wow, that seems busted as hell. They're going to have to pull that back. Okay, Electrostatic Blast. 2 mana, instant, deals 2 damage to any target. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, not just this turn, at all, exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play one of those cards until the end of turn. So if you don't have a ton of mana available, you could play some other spell, an Electrostatic Burst, pass to the next turn, play like a Lightning Bolt or some cheap card, and then pick one of your top 3 cards to cast. Okay. That seems neat. And a Forsaken Crossroads. Again, you can't quite read all of it, so I'll just read it. When it enters the battlefield tapped. As it enters the battlefield, choose a color. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1. If you weren't the starting player, like if you didn't go first, you may untap Forsaken Crossroads instead. So if you went first, you get to scry. If you didn't go first, you may untap it, or you could scry if you want. Then it taps to add 1 mana of the chosen color. So if you don't play Snow, this is a pretty good card to play. Alright, next 10 packs, let's see what we get. Sigardian Evangel, Ethereal Escort, we haven't read this one. 3 mana, 3/3, lifelink. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, choose a card in your hand, it perpetually gains lifelink. Okay, this is like Hose's mono red. Another Captain Eberhart, Lupine Harbingers, Veteran Ghoul Caller, or Wickering Effigy, which I still think is super busted. Obsessive Collector, Town Razor Tyrant, Hollowhenge Wrangler, here's a new one. 5 mana, 6/6. When it enters the battlefield, seek a land card. Discard a land card, conjure a card named Hollowhenge Beast into your hand. You may also activate this ability while Hollowhenge Wrangler is in your graveyard. So discard a land, and you put a 5 mana 5/5 in your hand, whether this is in play or in the graveyard. And when it enters the battlefield, you just pull a random land out of your deck. Oh, really? That seems fun. I don't know if it's good, but it's fun. Impatient 0. Alright, our last 10 packs. Let's see what we got. Geist Channeler. 2 mana, 1/3, human wizard. When it enters the battlefield, choose an instant or sorcery card in your hand with mana value 3 or greater. It perpetually gains the spell cost 2 less to cast. So if you pick a 3 CMC spell that has 2 colorless in its casting cost, you can make it cost 1 mana. Or you can make something like a Hullbreaker Horror cost instead of 7, 5. Okay, cool. Geist Channeler seems real good. Oh wait, no, sorry, this is instant or sorcery, not creature. So it can't pull Hullbreaker Horror, but it can pull an Alrund's Epiphany and make it cost 5. It can pull Alchemist Insight, Alchemist Gambit, and instead of making it cost 7, make it cost 5. Ishkana Broodmother. Okay, here's another. It transforms into Rahilda. Okay, so Rahilda Wanted Cutthroat. 2 mana, 2/2, human werewolf, first strike. When it deals combat damage to a player, exile a non-land card from their library at random. During any turn you attacked with a wolf or werewolf, you may cast that card and may spend mana as though mana of any color to cast that spell. So it sounds like your opponent doesn't get to know what the card you exiled is. Only you do. Then when it flips, it's double strike with the same effect. So it means you get the effect twice because double strike if it connects to a player. That's pretty neat. I don't imagine the double strike half of this card is going to hit very often. But it being a 2-mana 2/2 first strike already is pretty good. I mean, this belongs in the Werewolf deck right away. But casting non-Werewolf cards isn't very good in the Werewolf deck because you really depend on that creature typing, especially for things like Tovolar. Puppet Razor. We read that one already, I believe. No, we didn't. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to one creature card from your graveyard. If you do, seek a creature card with mana value equal to the mana value of that card +1, and that card perpetually gains Menace. So this is a weird kind of birthing pod. It just steps you up the ladder, but you have to pull creatures from... you have to get rid of creatures in your graveyard to pull creatures from your deck. But this is basically just straight up drawing a card. A usable card. Puppet Razor is a good card. And a mythic. Clone Crafter we read. Begin anew. Guardian Evangel. Sap Vitality. Wickering Effigy. And Geist Pack Alpha. And that's it. We opened 100 packs of the new Alchemy set. Now it's time to start creating some decks. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I'll come out with some decks for you to check out pretty soon. Have a good one. Until next time, fist bump, high five, take it easy.